All right. Hey guys, welcome to Unit 6. In this unit, this is kind of a brief unit because all we're going to be doing is basically tying together the two previous units. So the two previous units, what we did was we dealt with the symbolic universe, which is the realm where we define what things are. We define reality, explain to us what is out there. We did that 2 units ago, and then last unit we were in the collective consciousness, our collection of dominant beliefs in a society, which tell us how we should go about living our lives. Okay, so what we've done, and I believe I've tied this all together to a degree, by saying that the symbolic universe, which explains what is, and the collective consciousness, which tells us what we should do, are the main contributors to the thoughts that we have, the patterned thoughts that we have. The reason that you and I both believe that we should treat people equally, the fact that both of us, that we agree on how to define a cell phone, a particular piece of material culture. Okay, so we've got all that. What I want to do in this unit is just tie these two things together, because there's a term that I probably have used, but I want to make it explicit right now, that is a more conventionally used outside of the realm of society term, and that idea is culture. When we're talking about culture, what we are talking about is that entire left side of the of our machine. So, person gets inserted into the machine, and it is because of our culture that we tend to think and experience in terms of our feelings. Because I think we talked about the fact that I will get angry inside when I hear about somebody being treated unequally, when I hear about a case of discrimination. What that is me as a biological entity, a human being, being inserted into a machine that channels those feelings through a culture. And it's because of that channeling that I feel angry when I hear about discrimination. Okay, so the main idea in this entire unit is just to deal with culture in a more general way. We're tying the symbolic universe and the collective consciousness together into that one main idea of culture, the left side of the machine. Okay, I'm going to give you a definition of culture right now, and that definition is going to, I don't think I'm going to write it up there. It's not a long definition, but if I write it across the top, then it will potentially confuse you later on for when we deal with the right side. Culture is just the system of meanings a society has. It's a useful way of thinking about culture in terms of a bunch of ideas that are tied together in a systematic way, the system of meanings a society has. Just a word, and we're almost done with this video, a word on that idea of system, because we've dealt with meanings. We've dealt with the idea of symbols and beliefs. So we're kind of familiar with, and to be clear, that's when you hear the idea of culture, that's what you should be thinking. When, not just in our class, but whenever you hear the idea of culture, you should be thinking it is a system of meanings that kind of work together. We're talking about symbols and beliefs. But I want to draw our attention to that idea of that idea of system for just one last moment. These meanings tend to work together as a system, and there's an important reason for that. It's not accidental, and it isn't even necessarily intentional that a population of human beings assembles a machine to work together well. The problem is human beings are prone to a psychological, disorder's too strong of a word, but a psychological condition that they don't like, that we don't like, and that condition is cognitive dissonance. And I am going to write that up on the board, and please don't get confused by the fact that I'm going to erase symbolic universe and collective consciousness to write this. The idea of cognitive dissonance, if you have taken a psychology class, you may have come across it. Cognitive means thinking, dissonance means conflict. So thoughts in conflict is what you want to think of. A dictionary-ish definition of it is a state of having inconsistent thoughts. Now here's the thing. Cognitive dissonance is a discomfort that we feel. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with having thoughts or beliefs that don't go all that well together, but we don't like it. We dislike that experience of cognitive dissonance, and for that reason, we act in ways generally to try to resolve it. At the individual psychological level, I may lie to myself in order to relieve cognitive dissonance. I may say, well, yeah, I think of myself as an intelligent person, but I know also that I made an F on this test, and I'm going to lie to myself and say, well, the teacher's a loser, or I didn't study all that hard and I could do better. And that may be a lie in which I resolve that experience of cognitive dissonance. What the experience at a more sociological level of relieving that is a term that you guys have heard before and that we're going to make just a little bit explicit. The term is culture war. Culture war is a relatively important term in our political life right now, because we have all kinds of battles that are referred to as culture wars. The battle over illegal immigration. Should we welcome these people or should we close them out? The battle over gun rights. Should I have the freedom to buy whatever kind of weapon I want, or should that freedom be taken away from me in order to create more order? The battle over abortion, the battle over protests of flags, the battle over gay marriage. All of those are referred to as culture wars, and it bears just a moment to realize what we have there is a sociological or population-wide degree of cognitive dissonance. We have some beliefs or some ideas that don't work well together in a system, because remember, a culture is supposed to be a system of meanings. So America starts out with cognitive dissonance, right? All men are created equal, except all of the black people that we're going to put in chains and all of the American Indians that we're going to just push off their land. That degree of cognitive dissonance is something that eventually creates a culture war. We have battles, and by culture war, I mean I should define culture war for you. A battle for how we should define things. A battle for how we are going to, pretend symbolic universe is still up there, for how we're going to define certain symbols, or a battle for, pretend collective consciousness is still there, a battle for how we should live our lives. Let me give you an example, and this is an example that is, at least at the time of me recording this, is one that has been up in the news within the last year or two. The question is the issue of religious freedom to not take part in gay weddings. So we have bakers, florists who make their living off of weddings. But when they are approached by a gay couple, they refuse to do business with them. Now, I have my own personal feelings and beliefs about this, and you do too, and it's not important for you and I to be on the same page with it. What's important is for us to understand this issue as a culture war. It is a degree of cognitive dissonance. We think that all people should be treated equally, but we also think that I should have the freedom to not compromise my strongly held religious beliefs. So as a population, we've got cognitive dissonance going on. You as an individual may not, and I as an individual may not, but we as a society absolutely do. Those thoughts are inconsistent with each other. So how do we resolve it? We as a society, we end up having fights over how we are going to define wedding. Do we define wedding as between a man and a woman, or between two people who love each other. Now, again, where you come down on that and where I come down on that do not have to be in the same place. What's important is that you understand this is an issue that arises from inconsistent symbols, inconsistent definitions of symbols, and inconsistent beliefs. It is a case of sort of societal cognitive dissonance, and so we fight it out. Generally speaking, culture wars are fought out in the media or across the dinner table or whatever. They're generally speaking not physical battles, but they are battles for defining how we as a society, what are going to be the meanings in our symbolic universe, the beliefs in our collective consciousness. So we talked about how we're going to define wedding, that would be, or marriage, that would be in the symbolic universe. We could also talk about how people should live, which are beliefs that exist within the collective consciousness. Should freedom of religion be extended into the marketplace? Now, again, whether you agree with that or disagree with that is fine. Either way is okay with me. I want you to make up your own mind about things. But understand that when we fight about this, what we're doing is fighting about what is going to be a dominant belief in our collective consciousness. Culture wars are about the meanings that we are going to have as part of this machine, the beliefs that we are going to have as part of this machine, so that when people get inserted into the machine, they can have a consistent pattern of thoughts. That's what culture wars. Culture wars are a means of reconciling, making systemic or systematic the ideas that are on that left side. Oof, that was a lot. That was a lot. Rewind it and if you need to get all of it. Let me see. That might be the end of. That might be the end. Oh, one last point about this. Okay, so we've got culture wars, and we talked about culture wars are going to resolve this sort of society-level cognitive dissonance. It's important to understand that not all societies have to do that. Some societies don't have that much dissonance. Those societies, as you probably will hopefully remember from the readings, from the reading on Durkheim about the collective consciousness, those are societies with a strong collective consciousness, where almost everybody holds almost all the same beliefs. In those cases, there isn't a lot of dissonance, therefore there's not a lot of culture wars. The Amish don't have a lot of culture wars like mainstream America does, because pretty much everybody agrees on everything. That's good in the sense that less conflict. That's maybe not so good in the sense that and this isn't an anti-Amish thing, but a society with a strong collective consciousness is going to be less open to new ideas. One of the strengths of a weak collective consciousness is that there is more openness to more ideas. Okay, that is it. That is it for Unit 6, Video 1, where all we're talking about is this culture in a general way, how it's a system of meanings, and how sometimes it's not as systematic as it could be. In those cases, we have culture wars to try to resolve it. Next time, what we're going to do is take a slightly different look. I have presented the symbolic universe, the collective consciousness, and now culture as this sort of thing that exists. It's this machine that you walk into, or at least the part of the machine. Next time what we're going to do is look at it from the bottom up instead of from the top down. Look at how culture is created through interaction, and how because of that, we'll get to the idea that we haven't talked about yet, but a term that you also are aware of, the term of subculture, and how that fits into all this. So I'll see you guys then.